here, so I'm assuming he is
Who we talking?
nobody now. Look at the crowd. Who in the crowd don't you know?
Gentleman in the back seat.
Yes.
Yes. We good?
We are.
Come on.
All right. Twyla says we're live, folks. I'll open up this town council meeting for January 2nd. Please stamp the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All you, Twyla.
Okay, so your first order of business is roll call.
Yep.
Counselor Albert.
Here.
Counselor Colby.
Is excused for tonight. That's one.
Does it require a vote or not?
She has a legitimate excuse. I would actually entertain that to actually accept her excuse for a family issue that she has tonight.
I'll make the motion to accept as an excused absence.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Told you.
Pass,
That's
6-0.
one.
Counselor Crawford.
Here.
Counselor Lunt.
Here?
Counselor Ward.
Here.
Counselor LaRochelle.
Here.
And Counselor Brunel.
Here.
Moving right on, Twyla.
To good news and recognition.
Anybody have anything that they'd like to share before the council for good news and recognition? Happy New Year.
Yes.
Moving right on.
Next is the public hearing, the CDBG Downtown Grant, the Slum and Blight designation for Lisbon Village.
I will open the public hearing. State your name, please, ma'am.
Shall.
Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. As you know, we've gone through this process as far as for the Lisbon Falls in order to do the streetscape project. The CDBG is based upon low to moderate income. That's how you qualify for it. They are federal dollars. Lisbon does not qualify for the low to moderate income. What we have to do is we have to look at certain areas and designate those based upon the needs in the slum and blight and do the declaration in order for us to qualify for the grant. We are looking to go after the another downtown revitalization grant for the Lisbon Village area, and the amount that is set aside for the program 2018 is $300,000. So in doing so, this is the first step. After this step, then we will do the letter of intent, and that is due at the end of the month. So if anybody has any questions, I can answer.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions of Tracy or anybody else who would like to speak on behalf of this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, Twyla.
Okay. Next item is audience participation and response for agenda items.
Anybody wishing to speak before the council on anything on the agenda tonight, please? Seeing no movement, moving right along, Twyla.
Okay. The consent agenda is next. Any counselor wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Order 2018-01 to approve the municipal accounts payable and payroll warrants. Number 72 for $7,717.09. 73 for $4,448.06. 74 for $279,677.07. Number 75 for $193,206.33. Number 76 for $17,785.09. The school accounts payable and payroll warrants. Number 1034 for $357,462.62. Number 1035 for $13,090.32. Number 16 for $496, and number 1812 for $56,355.48, along with the minutes of December 19th, 2017.
I need a motion.
I'll make
Oh.
that motion.
Second.
You have your first, you have your second, all in favor.
6-0. Order passed.
Next item, Twyla.
Council orders, ordinances, and resolutions. Order 2017-02, the CDBG Downtown Grant, Slum and Blight designation, for the Lisbon Village area.
Anything else to add? Step right up.
Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. As you know, in the packets, there was a map. I just wanted to reassure you when I would look back through the map that it did include those churches. So I went in closer to see where the streets, and that was all included. The Lisbon Development Committee also received the map, and they were to get back to me if they had any questions, and they seemed to be fine with the layout of the map what we were looking at. In looking at the map, our planner also, this falls right within our downtown plan and our downtown TIF. Mind you, the downtown TIF extends a little bit more than where this one does meet, and it is within those perimeters.
Perfect.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
No, there it is.
All in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2017-3, Kelly Park Lights.
Step right up, sir.
Scott Kelly from here in town. A couple items. I'd like to, if I can, add just a suggestion on a paving ordinance. If nobody has any objections to that. There's a requirement in the existing requirement for paving and acceptance of a street to have a base and surface coat before the town will accept them. And in Kelly Park, I made the suggestion to the town to delay the surface pavement and put money aside in escrow from the developer, which was me. And the theory behind that would be for more development work to be done. Now, there's no basis, for benefit for the developer to surface pave. The thought process was to extend the life of the street, and that's not currently allowed. I tried to find a hole in my own plan, and I guess if I was going to make a suggestion on that piece of it was you obviously have some variances in paving on what that costs. So if there was a 2 or 3 year delay period, that can impact what the final cost was. But if the developer was willing to pick that up, to me that's a win for the town. So the final surface layer was added. It was requested, couldn't accept the streets without it, so I went ahead and had that done. But there's going to be several more years of construction out there, which is going to be now beating up on town roads versus the developers' roads. So as a suggestion, that's something that maybe wasn't looked at in the past, as a suggestion moving forward for development, to have the developer put that money aside in escrow that's protected, that they can't leave it without it being finished. The town doesn't get held up, and it's a better finished product. So as a suggestion, having been through this process, I just wanted to bring that forward.
Chairman, Scott, on something like that, what would you actually do? Would you set your base for your manholes at just the, for the first level, and then later on when you're ready to do your final coat, you would actually raise the manholes at that point in time? Because
You could do that, or you could actually shelf up around them with pavement temporary until that final surface layer. Even if it was a year or two, you're going to maximize that road layer and potential damage to it from other contractors going in to do each one of those house lots. They're going to drop excavators out there on fresh pavement. That could be a problem.
yeah, understood. Yep. I was just curious because I know a lot of times when they do the manhole covers and stuff, they try to set them at the final grade versus.
We had
the idea.
already actually set them at final grade, but we were gonna, what they call donut, we were gonna ring them so you could actually plow over them. It's not as, it's obviously not as beneficial aesthetically. It isn't to drive over them, but it would work temporary, again, with the best interest of the town in mind, where the town's gonna own those roads when it's finished. So, just a suggestion.
Thank you.
The other item is the acceptance of the streetlights in Kelly Park. I believe it was Curtis Lunt had brought forward. It was really at the 11th hour of accepting the development in Kelly Park. I remember it pretty vividly that Mr. Lunt had suggested that there was another area in town, another development that the town had accepted, and had later had to go back and install streetlights. I made the assumption it was Winter Park, but I don't know that he ever said. Streetlights was part of the Premier Road package. It was not initially part of Wine Time Circle or Champagne Lane, but it was requested to have lights installed. So we went back, Sightlines, the design firm that we worked with, went back, readjusted the plan. Ultimately, I believe it was on the 26th of January of 17 that plan was accepted. Winter construction continued in 17 through the summer. all the final infrastructure was installed, including the requested said streetlights. The streetlight package was turned on at some point this summer when the first resident moved into Champaign into Kelly Park. In September, I started discussions with the town and Public Works Department about acceptance of roads. Not having been a developer prior, I was not exactly sure what that process was, and town manager was gracious enough to send me the details of what needed to happen. It was explained to me a short time after that that the roads would not be accepted with any electrical package, including the streetlights. So after a few months of really not making any traction on that, we decided to pull the streetlights out. I was not in agreement that the town should not own those lights when it was they requested them. In an interest of really moving forward to give obviously the residents, now we have several of them in there on Champaign Lane and 24 units filled in the apartments. Not having the proper plow and equipment to really maintain those roads, we did in December, but in order to avoid, I guess, more pain, we moved forward and wrote into the deed excluding the streetlight package. These units are LED units. They were purchased with longevity in mind, as well as a low energy cost. In many cases, they're 5 times more longevity and far less repair costs than the lights found on many streets here in Lisbon today. In short, it would seem like it's a deal for the town to be able to just hand them over and let them be maintained. My question is the town's position that Premier Development should pay the streetlights required by the planning board and then not accepted. Should Premier have been impacted with attorney's fees, snowplow costs, labor, equipment, and other costs associated with delaying the acceptance of this road? In closing it off to the council and the town planning board, public works department, making life easier for folks investing in Lisbon is going to produce far better results than investing in a master plan that may fall short of what the town truly envisions. As an investor, I get to pick the town I want to do business, the communities I'd like to help support, and the risk that a return can be made on that investment. For me personally, having been raised in Lisbon, it was exciting to make the investment in a town I believe could benefit. Moving forward, however, I don't believe many of the other projects I had planned will come to fruition without another developer moving them forward. But hopefully the town recognizes in the council planning board some of the needed changes to help encourage more positive things to happen in town related to investment. I'm truly at a loss for why it's necessary, frankly, for me to be standing here tonight to ask acceptance of the package of streetlights that were requested as part of the approval process. Project has been built as approved, and I'd ask for acceptance of the lights by the town as well as the maintenance of them moving forward. That's it.
Questions of Mr. Kelly?
Chairman,
Absolutely.
and some of this, Scott, I'm just coming in on some of this stuff, but I did sit through quite a few of the planning board meetings, and when the sight line was going through the lights, and some of that was for the commercial, and then actually after for the residential. Now, on a development like that, and again, these are just questions I don't know. Same thing, I've never done anything with that type of size to it. Now, has CMP taken over the underground power from the main
Right.
road to the houses and through?
Yep.
Yep. And now, is there anything that about the lights or the wiring to the lights that CMP wouldn't take over if that was a question to them?
So they're all separate. So the underground power that's feeding the park is no different than any other development. So CMP would take over that. All the primary underground, which is your high voltage, and all the secondary, which is all the stuff from the transformer boxes to the houses, is all CMP's. The light package is all in a separate circuit fed off 196. Actually, the power comes into the park off Moody Road. There's a 3-phase line out there. That's where the park is fed from. And the streetlight package, Premier Drive and Champaign Lane and Winetime Circle was supposed to be added to the same circuit, is run off a separate meter on 196.
So it is
So
its own
CMP
circuit.
would not maintain that.
They wouldn't.
No,
Yeah,
it's all private.
think the biggest thing is for me on the council, and again, I don't know a lot of the details and, you know, some of the stuff that, you know, even today I was just looking for some different information to find out is, one of the things that Tracy's here tonight is actually to try to bring up Lisbon. I mean, as you mentioned yourself and other development and other people individually have been trying to invest in town to try to make it look better. Some of the areas that Lisbon actually over the past actually have been responsible for hasn't really actually been maintained real well. And if you look at the street lights down on Main Street in Lisbon Village, it's been kind of proven anything we're gonna maintain actually doesn't actually live very well, you know what I mean? And not saying that bad against anybody because it just falls usually amongst responsibility that no one really has at times. But, you know what I mean, I would hate to think that this would actually, you have way too nice of a development for that to fall to that faith, you know, down the road. So be curious to see from, you know, the town manager and other information what we can actually do to try to move it forward. I mean, as to myself, it would be nice if this lights could be handled very similarly to any other street lights in town if CMP was, you know, offering that as a package. But I do understand that that's not quite the way these were, you know, initially done. But yeah, I'd be looking just for some more information. I mean, I wouldn't be able to make any decisions tonight without actually having some more information and what it would be and cost-wise. You have any idea, you know, I mean, a traditional CMP light, I think, costs an individual like $12 to $15 a month or something like that to operate.
Right,
Is that,
just, I mean, keep in
yeah.
mind the difference in the park is the development is everything's underground, there's no poles in there to attach to, so if that was, you know, if that was the case, it would be, probably very similar to what you have every other street in town.
yeah,
But that wasn't what
Yeah.
we put forward in the plan, was all for everything to be underground.
yeah. Now, is it, and again, without speaking to someone from CMP or having a town, is it the idea of, is it the underground part of it that CMP wouldn't be, or is it just the way it's metered that CMP would have an issue as far as for the way that's actually set up?
I
was
mean,
kinda curious.
CMP only owns to the meter.
Yeah.
I mean, they're responsible for, like, for your home,
Yeah,
the overhead stuff, but anything private, it's private.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where the rest of the park is underground, and I do realize how they actually, you know, if it's done to a certain standard, will actually take ownership of that once it is. I mean, you would think that, as moving forward, most developments, I mean, you would hope to be actually underground service just for a long time, you know, servicing that they would actually somehow be able to look at something like that and take something that, I mean, if it's actually a better quality product than what they're doing, you would think that they would only benefit by the idea of actually, you know, being able to ever work with it. But again, that's just a question. I don't really know the answer. So.
Like, you actually brought up something that I wanted to kind of drill in a little bit more on. So I heard you say up to the meter, and the meters are located in different sections, 2 different meters, if I heard you right. Is that right?
Well, the meters are, so, only the houses are metered.
Yep.
So the underground power comes in, primary power, like what you would see overhead on a pole.
Right.
Goes underground to the transformer, gets reduced down in voltage, runs to the house. That's what CMP meters. They don't actually meter the line voltage coming in off Moody Road.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to understand, and that's what I want to pick up, because I'm far from an expert on anything to do with how the electricity gets there, but I want to understand the primary point where CMP owns up to, let's just say coming in off of Moody Road, for example. Does their responsibility stop there and everything inside of the area
Nope.
no longer there? That's what I thought I heard you say, or when we asked earlier. Everything that's underground right now, they're going to take ownership of that, including the appliances, the lights themselves. Am I hearing that right? No?
Nope.
Okay.
CMP will own all the primary underground and
Yep.
the secondary stuff to the houses,
Okay.
to the meter.
Okay.
After that's private.
Okay, that's fine. All right, good. I just wanted to hear from you. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that.
Going with you, the council's actually expressed, Mr. Kelly, the fact that I know there's been dialogue going back and forth. I've actually had it to be an open discussion. That's why you're on the agenda. I didn't want to bring it up during council communications. I wanted you to actually be able to explain it firsthand. Actually, instead of dealing in hearsay, put people in the room to be able to at least get to a place where we can actually do this. Like the streets, I, at the same time, didn't want that actually delayed either. You met the criteria associated with what we were looking for acceptance there, and at least beginning the dialogue associated with it to be able to move things forward. You've worked with us over the course of the last year that I've been involved with the TIF rewrite and that kind of stuff and the change in the development there, and not wanting to discourage you as well in that process. Any other questions of Mr. Kelly?
Sure, just, if we
Please.
could. Scott, any idea roughly what takes to operate those. I mean, I'm not sure if you have enough time there yet since they were on.
I don't have it here tonight, but I know the people that can get it.
Yeah, I'd just be kind of curious of what you actually have. Any idea of poles right now? I went through the other night just looking at them. I had kind of a rough count, but I wasn't sure.
I did. I actually, I thought that may came up. So there's 11 25-foot aluminum poles on Premier Drive, and there's 6 20-foot poles on Champaign. And don't hold me to the exact number. I literally counted that off a overhead shot that I had and counted them before I came up. It should be pretty close. 11 25-foot, which is, those are more when it was commercial based.
Yep.
And then the 20-footers were more residential application than a 25-foot pole, and they were a little cheaper too. So
And that's what you're gonna continue when you go down around Champaign?
my time
Circle?
Circle would have that same 20-foot pole unless
Somebody says no.
somebody says, don't put them up.
So basically, you're looking for us to cover the cost of maintaining them poles and lights and electricity
Correct. Like any other street.
in the neighborhood, except these ones are probably better.
Well, they should last a lot longer than the ones that we have existing.
Again, I'm not sure why we're having this conversation then.
Let me,
Shouldn't
when,
even be a
when,
conversation.
I have a question, I guess, for the planning board now. The fact is, when the acceptance went through you
Moxie.
guys, was there
Well,
review of the streetlights ordinances in play to compare how they actually stacked
I
up?
can't remember exactly when the streetlight ordinance was passed. All I remember specifically was, as Scott said, that when the first light package was
Yeah,
put in, it was when the first development was approved, and that was when it was a 4-lot.
right.
We did require a lighting plan going forward, but we never specified anything more except that
It had lights.
it just had lights.
One more time, Mr. Parity? I didn't hear. Adequate lights, okay.
Yeah, it is, I don't think, to be honest, I don't think that the planning board or Scott even thought about the lighting ordinance when the lighting plan was in there. All we did, I remember way back when, is saying there needs to be one, and there was a lighting plan furnished. I went looking for it and couldn't find it since then, but that was way back in whenever the initial lot
Yeah,
was.
2010.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, and I don't doubt that one of our committee members during the hearing process wanted to know that the light situation was continued. So I understand that.
right. There was,
What
my
we-
understanding of that is it was a recommendation that there needed to be lights in the concept. That's what
Right.
you're reiterating as well, too, correct?
Right. And I also understand that those, as they're up there, I understand the way the ordinance is written, that they don't meet that requirement because there's too many of them. But it never takes in regard the fact that they're LED or whatever, so.
Right. That was the next point. So the fact is, if there was consideration to be able to be addressed for the planning board, there wasn't a cross-reference to the lighting ordinance, so we may be accepting something that's varying from that, but it's of the developer's opinion that it's of higher quality than what would actually be in play. Is that a fair assessment?
That's true. I mean, it can be fixed by readdressing the sign ordinance, the lighting ordinance in some particular way.
Right.
Or it could be, I don't know, a maintenance escrow, whatever.
The only,
but I
only
still
only
say-
point that I was making is it, to the letter of the ordinance that's written, it meets or exceeds what we actually have in play.
Exceeds,
Okay.
which actually makes it not conforming, because
Right.
the point of the ordinance was not to have too many lights.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, that's the only reason, just clarification, it's not a direct line how the heck we got to here. That's trying to bring me up to speed.
I guess something has to be changed.
Yes.
Right. Just-
It makes exception for Village Street and Main Street, but it doesn't even consider that.
Future development, right, because,
Needs some new wording.
Well, it had it, but it needs more than
okay. Scott, can you come one more time? In the original plan, there was something associated with natural gas. Is that coming next, or is that something that was, where did that fall into play with us?
The gas line,
Yeah,
it's installed.
but there's something about acceptance associated with natural gas. Did I remember seeing that?
That was in your original deed that you sent over for.
Is that
the
we have no
gas-
involvement, right? That's
No,
that's
the
not
gas-
that's
Yeah, and it maybe shouldn't have been. The gas wouldn't be anything utility would own that.
Right, exactly. That's all privatized, that's all them, because
Correct.
if that weren't the case, then we'd have it up Main Street. We wouldn't, right.
Trust me, they don't want the town to have.
Yeah, no, exactly. I agree, and that's why I didn't know from your perspective if that was just an oversight or how we got to that. I just want to make sure, that's all. You had a question?
Yeah, if I may, Scott, so is this something you can actually give some information back to the town manager as far as the operating cost, and once, if the park was to be developed to its full capacity, what would actually that would just be equation adding up after? I mean, once you figure out what per light or per grouping or whatever, right? So if you get that information, that'd be good. Now we're there, she can maybe pull some information together for us, a little bit better idea.
Sure, easy enough to do.
Yep.
Maybe as a follow-up, I mean, I think the lighting ordinance that you have today is probably it's pole mounted, right? Maybe as a suggestion of working with somebody on trying to get something reasonable, I mean, how many lumens you want, or how many lights, is it at intersections? I mean, then it would be easier for somebody like myself to work with a design engineer and
Yeah.
say, here's what the town
Expects.
wants for a concrete base mounted light, how tall it needs to be, or how not tall it should be,
Yeah,
and
no, that's all there. I think the point being is the point that was made that got you there is that it needed to have lighting concern, but it wasn't actually addressed through your review, is the point that I'd make.
What I can understand is you just have too many, is what they're trying to tell you.
Right.
That's all
Which-
that I can read out of that. If-
Which, when I heard him say that, and I heard Karen say adequate, I'm like, well, that's open to interpretation all day long. So we leave ourselves open to these types of situation.
which is
and
why
then
I never
too
said-
many. It's a head scratcher. I'm like, okay,
No.
all right.
Meets
I
or
believe our
exceeds.
I believe our ex-town manager turned off every other street light, or street lights that were unnecessary. I can't
Yeah, at
remember how
one
it
point,
was written.
when somebody was begging for one over on Wing Street, they had to be turned
Okay.
back on. But
No.
So,
And I didn't want to beleaguer the point, bringing you back to the
running a-
podium, and just clarification on the gas. That's all I was looking for. Okay.
You were right in the fact that we were turning off lights, or attempting to get lights turned off. Way back in the Budget Advisory Board, we were concerned with how much money the town was paying for lighting.
Perfect,
And whether
sure.
they were necessary. And in some places where lighting was above lighting, like over here in the corner.
Right.
So at that same time, we reached out to AvCog, and AvCog helped us write an ordinance that does include lumens and street and pole height and all that, except that we didn't even consider a development like Kelly Park.
Right.
When we were
Right.
doing it. Nor do we consider ownership, which has been always CMP, except for public property.
I don't
Yeah.
think at any point in time anyone's saying that. There's no way you can anticipate everything. I think you guys do a fantastic job anticipating what you can. But when we run into these kinds of situations, well, we look for an opportunity to make it better. And I think that if anybody's going to do it, you guys will. Now that we kind of shining the light, that's kind of funny.
Just if I could say one thing.
Sure.
Please.
Flip side is if CMP isn't willing to accept the polls and the number, should the town, I mean, I think Mr. Kelly has done a fabulous job with that area. It looks beautiful. There is absolutely not. But if it's overextending CMP, and I think that's the problem, is because there's more.
Right. Then what? Right? No, it's a good question.
When it's ours, we can't, in a year or two.
I think that kind of goes back to what Fern was talking about a little bit too, saying if we can get some information to say what's the, I know that you were talking more about operating costs for what does it cost to actually run these things month to month from a billing perspective, but we can also look at what is the replacement costs of these poles from a maintenance perspective. I think that's what you might be driving at if they don't take ownership. So I think we can kind of put those numbers together and decide where we need to land.
More dialogue that needs to be happened, but at least we have the information from Mr. Kelly to start that process. Anything else?
I think we definitely want to encourage developers to invest in the community and make, improvements. So I think we want to, try to find a way to work with Mr. Kelly to, resolve this amicably. So he's happy and feels he's, not being stymied by the government somehow. So I think we got to work to find a, good solution for you.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? Moving right along, Twyla.
Order 2018-4 municipal budget schedule, the 2018-19 and school budget validation timeline.
It's on page 20 and 22 of your packet. I followed pretty much the same schedule as last year. It's changed by a day or two.
I like you flipped the order.
And I did, I flipped the order so that the same departments were not going first every year. And also on the
school budget public hearing, that will be held here instead of at LCS.
Oh, you don't like the 8 people? It's a big
Yeah.
room. It's a big room for 8. Yes.
I know.
That's good.
So those are the major changes.
Barring any change or anything from there, so we can swap the venues if we have to for that night.
Exactly. So this is,
Nope.
you know, a working document. It can change as we move through the budget process, but it's just something to,
I signed 17, but 18. Thank you for the date.
nope, you did right.
Surprised.
Okay. If there's no questions associated with the dates or anything like that, I'll accept that for the calendar to be able to move forward. Next item 12,
Other business, council committee reports.
school
They were off, so was I.
planning board. I'm gonna try stumbling my way through this one. I know Dawn just left. It's my understanding there was a proposal came before you Thursday night for medicinal marijuana retail that our current moratorium does not cover, and that you folks need to act on that, and that would be forthcoming. The opinion of legal that was associated with that is that that is the case. We are currently not protected by our moratorium, and that is a valid application at this point. That what our action would be moving forward, that would be something we have to consider. Anything you guys would like to add on that, Sperry?
I would just like to say that it's a gray area. It's been a gray area. I mean, the state doesn't know what it's doing. We don't know what we're locally doing because of all the situation. But I think the problem is we need to decide if we want one medical retail place in town or we want many. Because as the planning board can only vote according to our ordinances and our zoning,
Right.
not our opinions. And the council has a little more leeway in that. Your opinions are why you've been elected. So it is a little different. But we can't make any decisions without knowing what our ordinance is and what our restrictions are. And we hear what the lawyer says and all, but Diane, I don't mean to single you out, but you are our town manager. You, in my opinion, one of the most important people in town. What is your personal opinion? How do you feel we should go ahead with this? Because I hear every day people saying, well, what does the town manager say? What does the town manager say? And I often say, I'm not quite sure because it's a complicated issue. And it is a very complicated issue. And everyone up here will say it. But again, you know, the planning board, I think we are kind of put in a spot where we try to serve you, we try to make decisions, but again, we can only make decisions based on what the zoning and the ordinance. We have to approve things that meet those. We can't approve things that don't. So I think the council really needs to decide, with the help of our wonderful town manager, whether we want one medicinal retail establishment in town or many. If we don't want many, I think we need to follow what Brunswick and Thompson have done. They allowed one, but it was only because of timing, and we are again behind the timing. So I think that's probably going to be a moot point. We do need to decide whether we want one or many. And I know medicinal is very different from recreational, but it's a very complicated issue. And if our state can't get it together, I don't know
It's not the first thing the state can
how our
get together.
town is going to. But we would like to, I think the planning board would really like to know where the council and the town manager would like us to go on this.
Don, before we answer, can you give us the address again? It's not, I remember.
95
Thank you.
Lisbon Street. Yep.
Correct.
Used to be a cabinet place.
Correct.
Yep. And they've been growing there for probably a year.
Yeah. I don't know how much Karen said, but,
Plenty.
well, we know that, based on legal opinion, that our moratorium does not cover this
Right.
particular situation. And I'm not sure where everybody knows in the background, but I was reading the Times Record back in August and September, and very interested in the fact that they were having a medical marijuana storefront proposal. I said, geez, I never heard of that before. And we certainly didn't know anything about it. So, and I don't think they did either. And the process ended up working that they had an application but didn't have an ordinance or a moratorium. So kind of sounds familiar. So the behind the scenes somewhere along the line working was that they ended up, if the applicant could get the application in time before a moratorium took place, then it could be that one operating facility. So that's exactly what happened. They did an emergency moratorium, which coincides with their other moratorium, and so that's how that process works. In our case, if we don't address that issue at all, we do not even have anything defined in our ordinance. By the way, Mr. Smith presented the other night a stack of paper this thick that supposedly, I have no reason to doubt it, but is going to be the new rules that are adopted February 20th. Well, this is the only copy we've gotten, but and I can't tell that it really addresses storefront very much in there either. But it does liberalize the situation and make it easier for medical marijuana to be dispensed. So I guess what I'm saying is we have an ordinance that says commercial development includes retail, and we've interpreted, because we've been told that we can, medical marijuana can go in growing operations can go in a commercial setting. That's as far as it goes. We have not said anything else. We have not set any requirements, no distances, nothing. And my point would be, and I don't know if Karen said this, was that I believe we need a moratorium that addresses that long enough, at least, for us to put something in place before we get 12 applications. And if we're going to have 12 places in this town, at least they need to be appropriately looked at. That's my point.
And if it be the wish of the council, Mr. Fellows has provided me what Brunswick put in place for a moratorium on that. I'll give that to Diane if we choose to actually move forward with that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, please.
Don, I'm not sure if you wanted to get back up or not, but, and again, I sat through quite a few of those initial discussions, and that is something different, the idea of retail space for the medical. Now, if that's actually approved for a location, does that change? Because I know there's not a whole lot of guidance or oversee or on traditional grows. I mean, as far as medical, if someone's actually doing it as a caregiver, I guess. I mean, I don't know the logistics of it. But if they actually open a retail commercial space, does that actually change how that's regulated differently? I mean, as far as the requirements of the space and packaging, and I mean, I don't.
It's pretty gray.
Well,
pretty green.
Yeah, whatever. but-
I'm not an expert. He spent some time, we had a preliminary meeting.
Yeah.
And in workshop, and he explained a lot of stuff that goes up here to me.
Yeah.
But it's currently a grow operation, and he wants to use, I think he said 500 square feet of it.
There's an
something like
office.
that.
There's office front right out front there.
Right,
They use
right,
the salt.
right.
I'm assuming
But
that's what he's trying to do.
As I understand it, you have to have a card and to go in there to shop, and how many people you can have was 5, I believe, at one point. However, that's changing around how that's dealt with. So, no, not just anybody can walk through the door at any time and get there. You have to.
Well, that's the idea behind the medical piece of this, is
Yeah.
that,
But he talks
Have a lot more than
about
5 now.
not talking retail,
What he's
That-
talking
that-
about.
that's what I was
People
thinking.
hoping to get their
Because when
foot in
we-
the door, though.
not talking California as a couple days ago. Yeah,
When we
it's
did
a
that
different animal.
moratorium, the state mandated how many dispensaries you could have. So what's the difference between retail marijuana?
Oh, that's addressed in
and
here somewhere. That's in these
dispensary.
proposed rules.
Correct. Correct.
So it's okay. Well, that's why it wasn't a right.
So the state
Right.
changed their laws and then didn't give us time to adapt to it.
Yeah.
It's very, it's very, it's interesting.
I'm well versed in what you can and you can't do. My brother-in-law actually runs a caregivers facility out in Manchester. They've been there for, I think, about a year now.
And that's different than a
You have to have a-
dispensary, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a little mom and pop storefront
Huh.
where you have patients, they have to show a card, and each patient basically can come in and get up to 5 ounces a month on their card.
You can also do
So, you mean you-
edibles and things
Well,
like that.
he's got the whole, they got the whole
That's a
show
whole
going,
lot.
right?
As I understand that.
All on
with
the medicinal
edibles,
side.
There's a whole different licensing process as well.
I guess the question that I was asked originally is more so on the logistics of, once it's actually established as a retail commercial, does that fall into different guidance for the town as far as for the idea of oversee, as far as like the building, the spec, all the stuff that any other business would actually need to actually have?
As we understand it,
Yeah.
in trying to read this, that normal inspection, the only privacy issues are with the patient, not with the caregiver. So that's the way we understand it. That's the way we heard it from MMA when we went to the conferences up there. So that's that's evolved since we came before you. Before.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, this is a business storefront subject to personal property, just like any other store?
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, which I
It's,
don't give a damn about that piece. The fact is that retail is the philosophy that's been in play from day one. But when you've got retail is retail, but you can't actually even consider that because of the privacy, that's not an equal playing field for somebody.
Yeah, you take the
there are
product out of the
people out
equation
there.
altogether, and I think that's the
Right.
biggest, that's the biggest hang-up for everybody. If you take the product out of the equation altogether and just treat it like any other retail environment,
And I think that's what the intention.
Right.
is.
yeah,
Okay.
Except for the appropriate regulation for medical things and for food.
right.
All right, I'm gonna circle back the wagons. I apologize. That was, Scott got the short
Hey,
straw. Please, absolutely.
Eric wants to come up.
Eric Davia, Lisbon. I just wanted to comment on that same topic. There was a time that I was dead against any of that medical marijuana. I just thought it was a gateway for people to get in stuff. I know many people that have benefited from it on the medical side of that stuff, and there is proven that the stuff does work for a lot of people. With that being said, the guy is talking about his is you have to have a medical card in order to go in to buy there. Nobody else can go in. The problem with that is those medical cards are being given out to about anybody that wants one. So that's, that's not being run, I don't think, the way it should be.
That's DHHS for you.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
regulation.
with that being said, if we was to not stop this, I think he's running this one pretty good. I mean, he's got the biggest problem people have complained about is the smell of it. And the stuff gets out there. He's got some type of filtration system that keeps that down.
He's got a house pretty close to the right, and he's got a
And
trailer park
nobody has
behind him.
complained about the smell. So he's doing something right there. Nobody even knew that. Most people in town don't even know there's something going on there. And like I said, I do believe that there's good medical purpose behind it. I think the stuff is being abused. I think a lot of people are using it just because they want to get high off it, and that's it. But my point is, I don't think we want a bunch of these in town because it's not going to be as good as we might think it's going to be.
Well, to kind of go to what your point was and what Dawn was saying, and made me think about that as well, because it came up during our couple of sessions for informationals. The smell, the piece of that came into the equation. So how would we regulate any other business that may have had some sort of noxious fumes as a
That
byproduct
could be
of
done.
their...
You'd have to put.
And I
in-
think that's how I think we would
Right.
regulate that.
You'd have to have certain ordinance saying that you have to use this type of filtration system and.
Right. And right now, what we don't have is anything, as
There's
what they're
nothing
saying.
there.
So if we got like half a dozen of those show up, and we don't have anything on the books, and there's just willy-nilly, and it's an honor system, whether or not they want to put it in.
So I would strongly advise getting a moratorium on them quick before we do have a whole pile of applications and we're stuck with having to deal with
Pick
it.
the locations.
And you might, if you're gonna have something like that, you might wanna invite some of them people who are looking to put in an application to come and sit with a board and say, hey, this is what we do, and this is how we stop it, and this is how we do A, B, C, and D. And we're willing to go with your guidelines, and we'll try to help you, and you can help us.
Most people who are going to bank their livelihood on a particular business probably do a little bit of research before they jump in it. Most. So I think it's not a half bad idea, Chris, to bring them in, because they might have some pretty good ideas about how we can help them out, if they are gonna come here.
My 2 cents, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
As you can see, they had a busy Thursday night. That was the report associated with that. I guess I'd ask the question, what be the wish of the council? She has what Brunswick did for a moratorium. We have the legal opinion. We're in the same position as Brunswick. We're currently not protected. This is a valid application. We have the ability to be able to set whether we have more if we act sooner than later. Do you want her to proceed with the discussion
I
from
think we have to be
moratorium?
careful about creating an artificial monopoly with just allowing one person.
Correct. I would not be in favor of just giving one out to somebody and everybody else is doing on their up and up to.
Free trade now, is it? Huh?
Right. I mean, we got quite a few hairdressers down on Main Street in Lisbon Falls. I'm pretty sure we could have a couple of different guys and girls in different parts of town doing the same thing.
And they go out of business all the time. I think the same thing would happen with
Right,
that.
right. They want to stick their neck out and get up on board and try it out as legal as beagle as they can, by all means. Again, it's free business, right?
Well, yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. I don't want to see any one, but at the same time, I think we do want to get some stuff on the books that kind of regulate a little bit some of the
Absolutely.
concerns we've heard.
I'm not about not putting something on there a little sharper than we have, but
Right.
we're not passing out one ticket.
No, I
How it's
agree
gonna
with that.
work.
I
Okay,
agree.
let me clarify why. The intention would be not to limit what we can do. The intention would be to stop it until we can get something done.
Right.
But we
Right.
cannot, we
Moratorium
have
to
a
address
choice
the
right
issue.
now. With that one applicant, we can say no and go to the appeals board probably, or we can approve it, or we can approve it with condition. That's our choice now on that application. But we don't have to do that with everybody else. We need to study it. Personally, I think the board too thinks that this is probably one of the best applicants we could have. So if we're letting a preliminary through before but I don't think, legally, I don't think we can stop the thing.
Help me out for a minute, Don. So approve with condition, approve with condition. So if we approve with condition saying yes, however, there is some legislative, or no, I wouldn't use that, some discussion around what the framework will be for certain
Oh, yeah.
guidelines.
Yeah.
And when that is framed out, then we move forward. Something like that. Is that what you're saying? That's what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay, good.
We just,
A lot easier to understand
we
the
can
one
approve
now.
with, you're working through one situation
Oh,
at
no,
a
I-
time. So that's the sole reason. It isn't to say we're going to have a monopoly, although I'm sure certain retailers would love to have that. That is to say that we don't have a choice right now. It's either if we let this one through, there are lots of them that have to come through as well.
What's the next one? The next question is, what is the timeline, the end, the stop point? Because on the moratorium, on that moratorium, because for me, that's going to be the only reason I'm going to get on board with something would be a one.
Right.
Is if there's a very small window.
Right.
That would
The
be the only reason.
well, as I understand the ordinances as I've read them, is you can put a moratorium on, and it's like any other moratorium. You have to have a hearing, you have to do this and that, and it can last a maximum of 6 months, maximum. You can put an emergency measure if it affects life and health and all that, which is what Brunswick said it did. And in our case, that would last a maximum of 90 days, and it's done in a week without a hearing. So, yeah, and that's what I read, but I'm not an attorney, so.
So we have the Brunswick, and I'm just trying to tie some things together here. We have the Brunswick, the piece they're operating under right now, which probably talks about some of the things we've already talked about tonight. So if we decided to move on that, we put together an emergency for 90 days. But if we have this thing ready to go by next meeting, I'm just saying, hypothetically, if we had this thing ready to go by next meeting, we could then vote on it at that point and pull that off, and anybody could come, and it wouldn't just be one anymore. Is that right? Just want to understand.
Yeah, I mean, if you could do it in, 3 months or so, I'd say that's, reasonable, but I wouldn't want to go
Well,
6 months.
you can put a moratorium in place, a regular moratorium
Right.
for 3 months. You
Right.
don't have to do 6.
Right, but I think this shorter time period we can have so that you're not giving one business an advantage over another. If you can do something within 3 months to craft an ordinance so we can approve that.
No, and I
that's-
think you're right, that inviting people who are interested in doing that to come to a session to help us get smart.
Mr. Smith, isn't that what, the guy that you spoke about on 95?
Yes.
Let's set that up. Let's just have some people who are.
A lot of questions. I mean, just the idea of, when it becomes a retail space, is it taxed differently? It's definitely a different.
What is the tax?
Well,
That's
that's
what I mean.
That's a
And
whole
the
other
idea,
thing.
to me, if I'm the only game in town,
Yeah.
and my business now is actually approved and whatever, to me, that's actually a more.
I'm understanding,
likely just to sell the product out. I mean, the whole business, right? It's its own
I'm
established
understanding
place.
from, if I am not mistaken, from these rules that were given us the other night, preliminary, that there may be some taxation issues in it.
Well, I mean,
So-
retail is retail. I mean, the idea when you're
I
actually
mean
doing something at
special
home as a caregiver, that's
taxation, right.
one thing. But if you got a retail space out front, whether the guy's out front selling lettuce, which happens in town, or the guy's actually selling a product that's actually worth a lot more, maybe at the end of the day, maybe not. But I mean, it's one of those things you would think that is, if they're both retail businesses, they would be handled.
He did,
Say,
he
take the
did
product out
handle
of
the
the way,
sales
you know,
tax
right?
issue with us, or talked about it anyway.
Yeah, it would just
The other thing
mention
I wanted
retail,
to
change the
say
whole
is that
picture.
not only Brunswick, and it was mentioned that Thompson, one of our planners came back with he had talked to the planner in Brunswick, he also talked to Thompson, and Thompson has an existing storefront. I forget what it's called, but it's anyway, they have one, and they're in some consideration of whether to do a moratorium or how they deal with it too. So maybe they're a good point of contact as well.
Same question. Do we move forward with consideration for a moratorium, or? I need to hear. I mean, I know. And this might, this is not a, this be a straw poll, because we're not even actually, without a motion.
We're just talking here.
Yeah, that's all we're doing right now is talking. Let's
So
be
Don,
clear
I mean, if
about that.
this person was to come forward and actually put a application forward, which you guys did, and
Got it.
and-
Oh, yeah, we're there.
Well, I mean, is there, as you had mentioned earlier, you gotta match one column to the next. I mean, it actually has to be approved or not as far as for, location, the idea of, ordinance, the whole I mean,
Dennis is not ready for that.
in a clean bill, I mean, is there ways you can say, well, this really doesn't meet the criteria? You know what I mean?
It's commercial, and what are the other criteria? You said it before, Don.
Yeah.
It's land use.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Nothing in land use.
But right now, he is currently directing to two classes. What are they? Commercial, and the other is what? Commercial is the only one? Industrial, right. That's the only place it's permitted right now.
That's not even that clear.
That's ambiguous as hell, but
That's
that
green,
is
too.
what we are, right.
But I know if someone wanted to actually just cook cakes in their kitchen, I mean, honestly, I mean, you actually have to go through the idea, you gotta get the state inspector to come in and actually do a test of your water, you gotta do a test of, there's a lot of criteria you gotta go through, you gotta show your liability insurance, you gotta jump through all the hoops to actually sell a $12 cake out of your kitchen, okay? Now, my question is, I mean, are those, I mean, to me, it's not just, it's medical. To me, it would be a higher standard than a piece of cake that
You would think.
You know what I mean? So, I mean,
Not in the state
it's-
size at present.
is there a checklist that you would have to go through to actually approve that business when you're actually talking about medical? So to me, it's not just land use, it's actually, if someone was gonna grow penicillin there, there's probably a certain requirement they would need to actually fulfill, right?
We don't have anything, tell him, Don.
Yeah, it's not, huh?
The same thing would be true, for example, when Kelly Park was approved.
Yeah.
He needed DEP approval to get all the deal with the aquifer and all that stuff. Same deal. He'd have to comply with all the state, just like childcare has to comply with all the state, be inspected by the state. It's the same thing. So locally, we would do land use and whatever local ordinance we have, but in that, we would specify that you meet all these requirements by the state.
I mean, because we don't know. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, as far as for water intake, I mean, you get a backflow preventer, probably
RPZ.
RPZ, $500, that's a yearly, that type of
Depends
stuff.
on the type of, degree of, danger, basically.
Anything, fertilizer, I mean, since you mentioned
Yeah.
fertilizer, right, it would need to be there. But even our sewer intake, I mean, actually, there's fertilizers, there's probably, I mean, it just seems like, as a business that, I mean, a gentleman that's growing lettuce, I'm sure his requirements, the hoops he has to jump through are probably tall, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm just wondering if we actually could hold it to the same standards and that.
If the
but it
state,
has not.
if the state has anything that's, anything.
They don't have any, there's nothing yet, right?
Well, there's here.
But it's
They haven't
not, but
approved
it's
it
not.
That has my
Not
attention, because now we can actually regulate it. You said it's the same business. So the fact is, once that actually came out, you now have my attention,
Yeah.
because it is better than what Dennis is dealing with right
Yeah,
now.
Exactly.
what are places like Colorado doing, or they're nothing, there's
I'm
just
not
recreational
Colorado.
only? Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm
We're
just
not
saying, can we,
sweating anywhere over
They're,
there.
they're getting an education at
can
cost.
we look at what they are, yeah, exactly, well, that's what I'm saying. We can maybe benefit from seeing what, if anything, is going on over there, because they've got the hindsight now of the fact that they've been looking at some of these things as they popped up and dealt with them real time. So I don't know if any of this will apply to anything that we're dealing with right now.
Recreational there, though. I mean,
It's all, I don't know, it's all recreational, though. We don't know if it's just recreational only. There could be other,
I just-
other strain.
I don't want to say that we're talking this to death, and we might want to
sure
move
we
this to,
are. Sure.
we might
Sure.
want to move this
I
to
wanna go
another
back to-
night where we could have some more,
Same
some more
question.
players in
Do
the
we
same
move
circle.
forward?
Well, that's it. Let's get some more folks in here other than
Oh,
this.
absolutely.
So am I,
To move on.
am I hearing yes on the moratorium discussion to be able, at least be able to,
I would
because
say
we
you
have to have
wanna-
public
Yes.
hearing to be able to move forward?
I
you
think
wanna
this,
put one
for
together just in
discussion,
case.
for discussion, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, for at least further discussion?
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
Do you
all I
want
was,
it, the emergency moratorium?
That's my preference. If it's, is that 90 days? Is that
I'll
correct?
find out.
because
I'll get
deal,
it.
deal with it now, so we're not actually
Let them go.
screwing the next
Right,
guy
some
that's
are
in
gonna wait
line,
and some
but
are
at
not.
least we're addressing the topic at hand.
I would just wanna say 90 days is short, when an application comes into us, and we have 6 years to make a decision. It might be perhaps
3 months,
go with the 6 months.
90 days,
and
6
we
months.
can continue away with it at any point in between.
Do you concur, Don?
State comes up with something.
6 months.
Yeah, I'm not feeling the 6 months.
They're not feeling the 6 months?
I'm not feeling the 6 months. No.
Give it window, opportunity. 90 days, 6 months.
Well, can't we go the other way too and just add another 90 if we choose? I guess for me.
You can do the emergency first, and then if you want to do a regular moratorium, you can after. The emergency's gonna take effect.
I think that's where I live on that.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
I mean, my take on it, Chair, I mean, it's gonna happen. It's one of those things that's already happening.
It's
Right.
coming,
The question is
coming down the
How
pipe.
much?
where do we actually, I mean, in between the hair salons down there, do you actually see one in between every hair salon? I mean, that's the question I have, is where they're actually put. You mean, and.
Because we've had this
you know,
discussion before about Robert's Pharmacy. We had some caregivers that wanted to go into Robert's
no,
Pharmacy or
absolutely.
what is Drapos.
Yeah,
And it got blown out of the water and it turned into a, you know,
yeah.
this guy is not even down there. This guy is
My
way up
heartburn from day
196.
one has been the fact is the only person that seems to have skin in the game currently is our code enforcement officer. Let's give him a little more tools to be able to address the situation at hand.
Okay. I think we're all set, right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an emergency.
Please.
Yeah, I just want to see people get grandfathered in there in a way that's, wrong for how the ordinance that we end up writing is. So I think it's best if we, prohibit it as
special
much as we can
treatment.
for the next few months. Right. Keep everybody the
Right,
same.
right.
We'll play the
Weiler?
Hopefully the rest of the reports.
We're gonna
go
play the
well.
role of Chris here. Next.
Yeah, next.
Water.
Nothing to report.
LDC.
New year, more stuff towards the end of the month, hopefully.
Conservation Commission meets Thursday, the third Tuesday of the month, so I'll have it later. Recreation.
Absent.
Winterfest, January 20th,
20th, correct.
10 to 2 p.m. There'll be more information coming out. I did at least get that date from Mark, and I told him I would share that.
Gotta keep a good thought for maybe some double-digit temperatures too.
County, nothing to report. Library,
Nothing to report?
town manager.
The rec department was successful in obtaining the Centers grant, $3,000 grant that Mark put in to do some upgrades in the kitchen, mainly his refrigerator. So we did get that. And then the new website is up and running. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, please check it out.
Looks great. Super easy to navigate. And I liked it. It was very intuitive.
I think it is a big improvement over what we had before.
I could point people there for hours of operation for the office, and that was pretty happy. But
Next, Lisbon emergency funding.
Yep, that's the next, Lisbon emergency funding discussion.
This is on the discussion primarily under council communications. I wanted to circle back around for goals for the coming year. This one needs to be taken before the budget because it's something that we've been making up time for to be able to address. So we've seen as of today, the proposed bylaws. Chief, why don't you come on up and just kind of frame that?
We rewrote the the bylaws, it's in draft form, first draft. We added the 3 seats for the towns. We put the restrictions in on Lisbon Emergencies members on the board. We added a budget committee. Right now, it's out by email to all the members in the subcommittee, I think, for suggestions. The second draft will go out. Hopefully, by March 20th, it will be adopted. A new board will take effect April 1st.
Perfect. Chief's correct. There is a subcommittee meeting
Next,
the 9th. Is that 6 p.m.? 6 p.m. here.
Yeah.
So that information went out to be able to get that. I'd like to get more parties that might be interested on that dialogue to fill the room, because it's a 6-figure investment this year and the next 3 years. So at least people are informed. We've been trying of the last couple of months here to actually get as many folks to have an opinion on the topic, to at least hear all sides. So,
It's, Chair, may I?
please.
Is there a deadline? I mean, at one point in time, before I got on council, I know that the end of the year was looming. You mean as far as for operation, but have you secured funds for operational until this goes through? I mean, that doesn't sound like anything's being voted on tomorrow or within the next few meetings. I mean, until we get some, I'm not sure where the information is at this point as far as for budgeting or.
funds, we have enough funds with that capital improvement to go through mid-July. Right now, we're having an excellent year. We're predicting we're gonna pick up in volume, because United is cut 3 trucks. So, increased volume, increased revenues. So, this year's looking very good for us. And
Following up with what Chief's saying here, the fact that their treasurer has expressed to us they need a commitment through this budget process to know one way or the other. Because we've been championing that. The original deadline of December 1st came and went. We weren't in a position to be able to have that discussion. Bowden wasn't. They need to go before their town meeting process, but at least moving through both business partners, having this meeting to be able to forward that discussion.
Some more questions on the 9th then.
Please,
Yeah.
yes. Anybody that has those, by all means, if you have them in advance, get them to Diane, get them to Norm, get them to Mark. They're all on this, Lydia, you know, the usual suspects associated. Get them to Chief. The fact is, inform and be able to address them.
I think the key here is that we were talking about maintaining the same level of service that Lisbon's known with Lisbon EMS, and that's really what this comes down to. No interruption of the services that you've always had in this community. However, now it would be the town of Lisbon making an investment to maintain those services. Really, that's what this comes down to.
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Next item, Twyla?
After Lisbon emergency, there are no appointments, so it'll be council communications.
I had goals for a discussion item. If you guys wanted to, you've seen what we were talking about. My concern with this is it doesn't have to be done for tonight, but I think for the next meeting, we ought to be prepared to actually, if we're gonna have to set workshops or anything for any of the topics that's actually been heard, or anything like the Lisbon emergency that needs to be taken out of order or prioritized, that we actually consider that. You know, so this is the working list that I've heard from all of you folks. If you have anything that should, again, it's just a compilation of everything I've heard at this point. But there are key things on here. Communication, the capital improvement plan, budgeting. One of the ones that I like, Mr. LaRochelle brought it up the last meeting. We did a good thing last year hearing from all the departments to actually hear their goals. He would like to expand that to committees. He'd actually like to put them to a deadline, is the fact that they actually have till a certain date to actually come before us to know what their priorities or goals for the coming year would be, so it's actually on our radar screen. It's my understanding at that point that they found that multiple committees working on similar topics and just redundancies. That said, it's here. Anybody has anything that they have for a cursory to start, fine. If not, we can have a future discussion for the 22nd. I brought it up in the council communications part because, as you see, the public got nothing. That is by design because it's a working discussion and I don't want somebody buried for the topic of what I've just compiled for at this point. It's not meant to be a witch hunt. It's meant to actually set the priorities for what we intend to do for the coming session. Okay, so give it some thought. I've put it on the 22nd for the following meeting, and if we have key workshop dates that make sense and that kind of stuff, by all means, we can frame it from there. It starts running March fast and loose in the corners with the Tuesdays with the budget, and that runs clean through the April time frame. So if we're going to do anything, we got a narrow window with the January, February time frame to fast track any of these items that you want to at least have for discussion, or if they don't need to be done during the budget summer, we can set timelines. Okay? Anything else on that? Again, I know what I'm thinking when I'm sitting here, but I'm one of 7. I want to hear from everybody because I think it was one of the things that worked well for us last year. Next item, Twyla?
There is no, let's see, audience participation.
I'm sorry, I monopolized that. Any other counselors have anything to communicate? Wow, that was arrogant as hell, wasn't it?
What Alan said.
Anybody else? I'm sorry. No one? Now you, Twyla.
Okay, audience participation for new items.
Anybody wishing to speak? Please, sir.
Forgot to mention, our quarterly board meeting is a second Thursday in January. Council and town manager and any citizens open, can come to it.
What's the date on that again?
Second Thursday in January.
As I look at my calendar, that is 18th. Oh, no, 11th, excuse me.
At your base?
12.
At our base at 1800,
Nope.
6
11.
Oh, I'm looking at the
You look at 17?
wrong one.
Yeah. It's Thursday the 11th.
Right off from there, so it doesn't mess with anybody.
Thank you, sir.
What
Next
time-
item.
what time is
Anybody
that?
else?
Thank you.
Next item, Twyla.
Next item is the executive session. Order 2018, number 5, to go into executive session per 1 MRSA, section 4056F, discussion of confidential records.
Will we be coming back? Anybody wishing to stay along, by all means. We want to step out and then come back? Sure. Let's do that.
The motion,
Need a motion to go into
I'll make that
executive-
motion.
I'll second.
In favor.
those in favor? Thank you, 6-0.
You're not here when we get back. I'm not going to entertain it.
Yeah, this is your run for your life. Why does it smell like fuel in here?
I know.
Because there was a vehicle out here.
Oh, that's healthy. Who's, so that's budgeted into some sort of
Tape is on?
filtration system? Into the,
Yeah.
Okay.
man, that is really, contact high.
Mr. Lunt has a motion.
All right,
Okay, it's a motion to loan $20,000 with a 7-year term at an interest rate of 5% from the Commercial Loan Fund to Terry Marsteller, doing business as the Hair Loft.
Second.
All in favor?
we're past 6-0.
I need a final motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Everybody sign that?
All in favor?
We're out.
0.
We're out.
I'm gonna sign it right now.
He's the only guy in the audience, I didn't know who he was.
Times record.
Oh, for the count.
Somebody
Yeah,
need to sign
just
something?
print your name so you know who it is.
You just jumped the line, but that's all right.
No, you gotta print your name and sign it. Print your name.